Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Struggle Is Not Real, the podcast that deconstructs popular myths and limiting beliefs that hold entrepreneurs back, replacing them with more empowering perspectives and practical strategies. I am Mike Indolfo, and I am joined by the queen of coaching, Kristen Tabbert, and the New York Times bestselling author of The 12-Week Year, Michael Lennington. Michael?
You look like the cat that ate the canary. What are
I
you
was just waiting for Mike to introduce me like Michael Lennington, and then I always wonder, what's he going to say? So I was just,
the senior citizen, the boomer, the old man of the group. We basically got to get all the good ideas out of Michael before he's gone. Yeah, before he loses his faculties. So,
too much multitasking.
We got a good topic today. I think we're gonna kind of like back. We had a couple episodes ago. We talked about the difference between being busy and being productive, but we're gonna go a little bit deeper, I think, with this one, and we're talking specifically about multitasking, and that multitasking is not efficiency. Multitasking is a myth. So we're the myth here that's holding people back is the idea that multitasking equals efficiency, right? I can get, if I got one set level of time, but I can get 5 different things done during that set level of time, well, then I've been more efficient. Well, we've all been there, juggling emails, meetings, and a dozen other things at once, thinking we're being productive. But where did this obsession with multitasking come from? And is it really helping us get more done? So to answer that, we actually don't have to go back that far. It goes back to the 1960s. The term multitasking was actually born in the computer industry, using to describe how early computers like the IBM System 360 could handle multiple tasks at once, or at least appear to be, which is, of course, today just unbelievable to even think about. Our computers are handling just thousands of tasks at once, right? These machines, though, weren't truly doing several things simultaneously. They were rapidly switching between tasks so quickly that it seemed seamless. This innovation revolutionized computing, but it also planted the seed for how we think about human productivity. By the 1980s and 1990s, as personal computers became household staples, the concept of multitasking started spilling over into our everyday lives. It wasn't long before that multitasking became a buzzword in the workplace. Employees who could juggle multiple responsibilities were seen as efficient and indispensable. The ability to do it all became a badge of honor, a skill that employers actively sought out. But here's the catch. Just like those early computers weren't truly multitasking, but task switching, so are we. And unlike computers, our brains aren't built for rapid context switching. Research has shown that we call multitasking often leads to more mistakes, wasted time, and increased stress. But somehow, society has doubled down on this myth, equating busyness with productivity. So today, we're going to unpack this myth and explore why multitasking might actually be slowing you down instead of speeding you up. And I'm going to start with Kristen today because I feel like it. Something tells me that Kristen might be a little more prepared than this for this one.
Yeah. If you know, you know, right?
Yeah.
You said something, you kind of summed up that multitasking creates some negative consequences, but it even goes beyond that. You are absolutely right. You are not being efficient. You are not doing a bunch of stuff. You're doing rapid task switching, which we are not designed to do. And when that happens, we're actually creating brain damage. We are damaging our brains. So one of the worst things that you can possibly do is multitask, which again, you're not doing. You're just doing that rapid switching.
Excuse me, what did you say? I was checking my email.
That was beautiful.
Thank you.
By the way, when you're doing things like that, like trying to run a podcast and checking your email, you just don't fully process what's going on.
Right. No, I mean, it impacts the depth of what you can actually go with certain things if you're not tuned in and giving it 100% of what you got going on. And actually, like the idea of the task switching and using the computers, especially with our use of AI. And I know that Kristen, you're a big Perplexity user. I like to use Perplexity, but Google's Gemini just came out with a deep reasoning, deep search thing, and it's fascinating to watch those models go, and you can see that they're actually not doing multiple things at once. Like they're like, because the way that those deep reasoning or those deep research AI models work is like they're almost like showing you the plan that they took or the path they took, and it's happening so quickly that you can see that. It's not that they're processing information all at once; they're just doing it very rapidly. So it's really interesting.
Well, I'm going to back up a little bit, and you've said it. It's clarifying what multitasking is. It's not doing a bunch of simultaneous tasks and executing them simultaneously, trying to look for efficiencies. But it's exactly what you said. It's do a task switch, do a task switch, do a task switch. And sometimes it's not completing a task before you move on to something. And so it comes at a huge cost. It impairs our working memory. Frequent task switching reduces memory capacity. It hinders our ability to retain information. And so you said something when you entered when we first started the podcast, you were kind of poking fun at Michael and his boomerisms and, not being able to remember. There's already a natural process that happens. I'm not making fun of you. There's a natural process that happens when we think. There's cognitive decline that happens. Multitasking is like racing you to the bottom of that as fast as possible. Multitasking creates stress and mental fatigue. You're trying to do too many things at once. You're forgetting things. You're not executing well enough on things. It can create decreased brain matter. We all have enough trouble as we get older remembering things, but if you're actively doing things to stop it, look at him. The gray matter is the region of the brain that's responsible for cognitive control and emotional regulation. So this is why he's regressing and acting like a 12-year-old boy sometimes because of his multitasking. It makes concentration on a single task for extended periods of time harder. So we're creating habits around, it's almost like our attention span being diminished is we're creating habits that reinforce those things. So you're making Swiss cheese of your brain.
Can I jump in here?
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I agree.
What you were going to say?
Well, so there's ways to multitask, and I'm gonna be a little bit separate here for a second. Like I'm smoking a cigar right now, and I'm being part of this. So there's certain low level. I can walk and I can think, right?
And sometimes walking helps you think, right?
Yeah, exactly, right. So there's certain things that kind of create this focus for all the noisy parts of our brain to kind of just focus on that, and it lets us to be not focused, but to have a thing that we're doing so we don't get distracted. But I think there's this thing about this human, that part of being a human that isn't like AI is that we have this ability to be in the moment, like be here now kind of thing. And what I like about that is that's where our true genius comes in. We get insights, we get these thoughts that kind of come out of nowhere when we're really focused and in the moment, working on something, kind of making it sort of approaching it like a craft, right? So if I'm writing a chapter or a paragraph in a book, if I'm being distracted by a lot of other things, I'm not going to get through that paragraph very well, and it's not going to be great. But if I'm really solely focused on what I'm trying to say, that's when I get the best insights, right? That's when those things just kind of pop into my head. If I'm frenetic and moving around, I don't get access to that. So multitasking doesn't just mess up our brain, it keeps us from tapping into what we're really capable of delivering a lot of times. And I think, when you're doing emails and you're doing voicemails and you're writing something else and you're taking the phone calls, it just gets crazy. And, you think you're moving all these things forward because they all got to get done. And if you don't get them, don't work on them, they're not going to get done. Reality is you're less effective over time, multitasking at getting stuff done than you are if you just stay singly focused and have discipline. So I think that's really cool. And I feel like But so I'm agreeing with what you guys are saying about multitasking, but I feel like there's something we're missing when we talk about multitasking that we're robbed of. It's that human genius that all of us have, to really apply that and bring our best to the work.
Which is very fascinating to me to hear you say that, because I think that a couple of things popped in my head as we were talking. Like, one thing, for example, is like Chrissy works better when she's in a very, like, she doesn't want a lot of, she would never have music playing in the background. She wants it to be more silent focus where she can kind of like dive in. For me, my optimal environment would be if there is some sort of background noise, right? So the background noise, actually, like, I can have the TV on while I'm really kind of doing some deep work, and she'll be like, well, how do you do that? Or she'll say, oh, that's an interesting thing on that show. I have no idea what's going on the TV, but it's the background noise that I need to kind of help with my optimal learning environment. But then I started thinking about, man, like, going back to the, Earl Nightingale and the strangest secret is that, man just doesn't think kind of mentality, and like how bad it is right now, because we fill every single crevice of free time, sometimes not even free time. While we're doing stuff we should be doing, we're scrolling on our this, and we're watching this reel and this funny meme and blah, 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 blah. And like these just dopamine hits that over and over and over that literally are making us dopey, right? Those dopamine hits that are making us into big dopes. And instead of allowing us to actually, like, it's causing just this whole amount of people that are just taking things at a surface level and never getting deep with anything.
Yeah. I think that's the price we pay if we allow ourselves to do that. It's absolutely true.
And by the way, I mean, those social media platforms we're utilizing today, I mean, this is how people are watching us, right? Like, we're hoping that we catch you kind of scrolling through, and that we catch you and you're interested, but we want you to stay. We want you to kind of really get into it. So, yeah, I don't know. What else you all got on this one?
Well, you talk about the physical damage to the brain, and it's one thing to understand that logically, but here's how it shows up for us in the real world. How many people right now are emotional? They're overwhelmed. They're stressed out. They're not making decisions well in their business. Our last episode, we talked about the emotional cycle of change. These are the things that are driving. The multitasking is physically eroding our brains in ways that this is how it's showing up symptomatically in your life.
Oh, and then the chronic anxiety that people have.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
there needs to be still time. There needs to be quiet time. There needs to be thinking time, time to really think about your day, how you're going to execute it from the morning. And at the end of the day, just thinking, there's this concept called thinking about thinking. It's kind of deep, but that's what we need to do. We need to take time to slow down. And one of the ways that you can do that and kind of alleviate the multitasking is manual repetition. We don't do enough of that anymore. Yeah, there's some manual repetition when you're scrolling through your phone like this, but you're not stopping. But physical manual repetition, and there's one particular thing that almost cures. It definitely repairs at a high level the holes in your brain that multitasking does, and it is knitting or crocheting.
Oh, you want me to start knitting?
You don't have to knit a project. You don't have to have a finished project. It's just the, chaining in and out, in and out, in and out, in and out. And to Michael's point, you can do things without having to think about it. You can talk to somebody while you're walking down the road or driving your car. Well, you have to be physically still because you can't be walking around. You need to be sitting down. Maybe you can walk in it. I don't know. I've never tried it. But there is a bit of concentration. It's not thoughtless. You have to think about, where's the next stitch going into? Is it pull it through, do this, drop a stitch? There is an element of concentration. And then the manual piece to that and the muscle memory of that. You're singularly focused mentally and physically on a task. And so you're not doing that rapid task switching, you're slowing yourself down and you're actually healing your brain. And I can get more technical and science-based if somebody wants to see the studies that show this and explain it much better than I did. But you're
Is there
killing
anything else besides knitting and crocheting? Can I do this? Like this?
Yeah, no, those for me too. I can.
Like, yeah. Is that
Oh, yeah.
fishing? 'Cause
So
that sounds like
let's
fishing to me.
unpack that a little bit. What is it about that? You think it's not manly? You're afraid
No,
of what?
it just doesn't appeal to me. Like,
No,
but
it feels. Yeah.
It doesn't appeal to me to take some of the medication I have to take to manage Lyme disease or do the shots I do, but they're necessary for my health. Why would you not do something that is not necessary for your brain health?
Oh, we do all kinds of things that are not necessary for our health. There's a guy on this thing that's smoking a cigar. I mean, let's just put it that way, right?
Well,
that is true.
Depends how much they smoke, but yes.
Well, now there's studies around nicotine that we can go down a whole nother avenue of that's medicinal. Nicotine does improve focus.
I'm all about it. Listen, and that's one thing I would tell people about cigar smoke. It's like the occasional cigar actually can lower your blood pressure and actually. Yes. And, and it's not, and I think it's kind of the same thing that we're just talking about. Like, if I'm going to smoke a cigar, I'm going to have an hour to an hour and a half where I'm slowing myself down. Mm-hmm. Right. And that actually, I'm now thinking that smoking a cigar is the same as knitting and crocheting. They just haven't done the study yet, Michael. We need to coin. That's true. We need to coin that study. It's there's a repetitive motion of it. Puffing and ashing and all this other kind of stuff. And I have some of my best thoughts when smoking a cigar, especially if there's bourbon involved. So
yeah, see, the bourbon and the cigar is even better.
Yeah,
it's multitasking, but it's acceptable multitasking.
And we are on to something. We are actually like making scientific breakthroughs on this show.
So I encourage you all to go visit the distilleries, load up on the bourbon, get some good cigars, and go sit out on your deck and just become geniuses.
Yeah, exactly right.
It feels like you're a genius.
Exactly right. No, but I do think there's probably. I like the idea. Like, and I said fishing because I wonder, like, especially like you're fly fishing, like the repetitive motion.
I would agree with that. I think that could be it.
Yeah, tying flies.
Time flies for sure. Yeah. I mean, I think there's gonna have to be some of those other kind of the knitting or figuring out what you're knitting and crocheting and not joking. I mean, could it be golf for some of these guys? I don't know. I mean, it's not this as.
I will commit to doing a little more research around this because the number one multitasking repair exercise is knitting or crocheting. But I'll commit to doing some research around some of these other things and see where they land and how beneficial they would be if you started implementing, being more intentional about them.
Yeah. The bottom line, though, we know this. Like, and Kristen, you've seen this data before, and you might not have the numbers in front of you, and so I hate to throw you again a big curveball. But when we're task switching and we're going back and forth. Yeah, well, actually, this is probably a better question for Michael because Michael's really big on deep work, and he's really big on one of the things that we do in the 12-week year is we have this 3-hour just like execution block, basically, where you're totally tuned in and you're getting in the zone and you're turning off your notifications because if you can get in the zone and start to hit some productivity, and you can really just you can start getting very efficient with your work. The one little time you stop and check your phone and check a notification or pause to check an email, it can completely derail that, can't it, Michael?
Oh, sure. You can say, oh, the phone dings. I wonder what that is. Oh, okay. And then I could lose 15, 20 minutes. And the thing that I recommend though, is that not beating yourself up for that, not abandoning the strategic block, but it's just noticing it and then coming back, because part of what helps you be less frenetic and go all over the place is just that quick noticing and then coming right back, getting used to coming back. You build that muscle and not getting distracted. But yeah, the strategic blocks are really powerful. I mean, I wrote books using strategic blocks, changed my life in a strategic block. And that's where people don't give themselves that gift of concentrated blocks of time to really, deliver your best. You can come up with what makes you uniquely great, and communicate that in a strategic block. That's the stuff that can last forever. I mean, you write a book or something that people are going to read that maybe after you're dead, So
What are the keys into having a successful strategic block?
It's just a lot of things going on, being a really busy area, phones ringing. No, it's the opposite, right? So you kind of look at the strategic block as you're putting up these walls between you and all the distractions that come in. So if you have a phone that rings a lot, turn it off. If you're constantly getting dings from social media or from text and whatever, turn those off. The world will survive without you in it for 3 hours. I promise you. You won't even notice you're gone. But being able to just, for a period of time, isolate yourself from interruptions. If you have an open office concept and people are always walking by bugging you, get out, go to the coffee shop. Whatever you need to. You can go to a place where there's things going on, as long as it's just kind of the background noise you were talking about, Mike. It's the TV on. For me, it's music. I play classical music because it's got the right tone and process for me to get deep into something. But you set your environment up so that it enables you to do that. And sometimes you have to negotiate with people that they're always coming in and bugging you to say, look, don't bother me for 3 hours. And then when they do come in, don't answer their questions. Say, hey, I told you, don't bother me. I got to get this done. So they'll stop coming in. But yeah, I think that ability to carve out time to be deep, to do deep work is where great stuff happens. All the things I've ever done have been because I've had the space to create an insight. Not that I've done much. Okay, I'm arguing on that side, but I'm saying, it's all relative. The stuff that I've done that I think is the best stuff I've done is all come from that kind of time.
Chris, you want to add to that?
It's kind of in a different avenue because I was thinking about what he was saying, and how do we, multitasking becomes almost autopilot. You just start doing it, and then you start doing more of it. So it starts with clarity and understanding that you are doing it. But what do you replace it with? It's like when smokers quit smoking. It's not you have a problem quitting smoking. The nicotine withdrawal is gone in 24 hours. It's that habit that's around the smoking, the things that first cup of coffee, cigarette in the morning, the end of the day, whatever. So you begin to replace that void with other things, and they could be. So what do we replace multitasking with? We replace it with habit stacking. That's a concept that's a little bit different. Maybe we need to do another show because it's going to take a lot to go into that. But then I started to think about, well, how do you incorporate?
You can give the basis of it. I think you can get the basis of it pretty quick.
So habit stacking is looking at, let's see, I'm going to give you the definition.
I would say that the two places where I remember habit stacking kind of coming to fruition was in James Clear, Atomic Habits.
Yes.
But this was really talked about in Katie Bilkman's book on how to change, right? Like this was.
Yes, those externals. So habit stacking involves linking new habits to existing ones, creating a sequence of actions that become automatic over time. So example, pairing your morning coffee, I can't even talk, pairing your morning coffee with journaling, things like that. It's layering good habits in, layering them on. And how can we do that? Because one of the things I started to think about when we were talking about that 3 hour block of time, I hardly know anybody anymore that has 3 hours to devote in all of the chaos of their life. But even beyond that, if you're really intentional and you're very specific, you can devote it. It's not that you can't. But there are a lot of people that are just, because of the cognitive decline, because of the multitasking, because of the inundation of screens and information and that fast pace of stuff that's coming at us, I don't know anybody that sits still long enough anymore to do something that deep. And so the habit stacking may be a way to layer on in gradual increments that may lead to be able to sitting for those 3 hours.
Are you guys big fans of the Pomodoro technique?
I use something similar to it.
Okay, so for people who don't know what the Pomodoro technique is, it's basically and Kristen, this triggered the thought with me just because you were talking about that 3 hours is a long time for a lot of people. But even if you could just get to execute and basically 25-minute segments, right? That's what the Pomodoro, it's the time that you would have on a kitchen timer. And you do 25 minutes and then you take a break for 5 to 10 minutes. And you got your little timer right there. You're the time timer. It's the time timer. Yeah.
Same thing. Yep.
And then you just get very focused on, hey, this 25-minute thing, this is what I'm working on Then you can go let your free spirit dance, and then a 5 to 10 minute break in between. And then every 3 or 4 of them, you actually hit maybe every fourth one is a longer execution period than just 25 minutes. I think that's an excellent place for people to start. I don't know if it's a long-term solution, but I think it could be an excellent place for people to start.
Yeah. Gradual build up. Absolutely. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
Great idea.
And then the fact that they use the word Pomodoro, which I'm a big fan of Pomodoro sauce.
Yeah.
Any kind of Italian, it's good.
Yeah. Okay, that's one of my vices. Italian food is my vice, actually. So you were saying something, Kristen. I want to challenge just a little bit, because I know you're giving people tools at work, and that's important. But theoretically, though, if you can't carve out 3 hours in your week to be strategic, you really need to carve out 3 hours in your week to be strategic.
I'm not saying that.
I know, but I was actually going some other point, and that is that, and I'll let you come back and attack me on that one later.
Okay.
But this whole concept of all my time is equally busy all the time is wrong. We have sine waves of activity. So there's days with the week, times of the day where we either peak in an activity or we have a trough. And so align your strategic blocks with the times in which you're not getting inundated with all the things that are. So if you're a receptionist, for example, and your job is to answer the phone, don't not answer the phone for 3 hours, but have your strategic block outside the time that you're actually live on the phone. So maybe you do it earlier in the morning, later in the afternoon, whatever. But work around what actually gets in the way, because if you really truly are someone who can't find 3 hours to be strategic, that's probably not good for your health.
But what if there's people actually, Michael, that physically can't focus for 3 hours? I think that was more Kristen's.
That's more where I'm going with this.
But that is a symptom of kind of today's frenetic nature. I mean, the way that we have time and we give ourselves that gift of time is really how we create things. And I think that we can't sit still. It's a symptom of the fact that we are so distracted. And I think you're right, though. You can't just do it. Well, you can, but it's difficult sometimes for some people to do it. And so doing it for an hour, getting into the habit of just not letting your interrupters interrupt you during an hour and doing deep work is good. But one of the things that happens for some deep work is it takes more than 60 minutes. It takes sometimes a chunk of time. And so if you spend too much time being strategic, you're going to run out of gas and inspiration and energy. You don't want to overdo it. But 3 hours is generally about the right amount of time to give yourself time to get something meaningful done, but not spend so much time that you burn out on it.
I think it's interesting because, being someone who struggles with being a free spirit and a firefighter, someone who likes to not have the constraints on my time that much. And then if there's problems that pop up, I want to go solve them. And that makes me give a little, dopamine hit on those. Is the 3 hour window. When we first started doing this, I thought it was way too long. And then I had to kind of get into understanding how to really utilize that 3 hour window to be effective. And I see now how important it is. But I do think that there's probably some people that are going to struggle with it. And where I'm going with this is that the thing that helped me out was the author Neil Gaiman. I heard him speak at Butler University, and he struggled with being a free spirit, and he would have these 3 hour writing blocks, and he had to give himself a choice. The free spirit in him had to have the choice. It was to either write or do nothing at all. And the doing nothing at all became so boring that he decided that this was a lot better to write. But he had to stick with that, obviously. He had to sit at his desk, and if he didn't, he could throw his little temper tantrum. It's I'm not going to write. I'm not going to do this, whatever else. And then, of course, after a while, it's okay, well, I guess I'm going to write. So, but he had to give himself that choice. And there's so much of this, Kristen, and I'll let you kind of have the final word here as we kind of wrap it up, is really kind of figuring out how your body works and almost how you have to gamify things and play tricks with yourself in order to be productive, be consistent, and execute.
You do. You have to have you have to start self-confrontation and really start acknowledging things about yourself, looking for, we have rhythms, natural rhythms where we're better at different times of day. Don't do what society and business norms tell you need to be doing. 6 a.m.ers, 4 a.m.ers, whatever, get up at 4 a.m., do the cold plunges, do all these things. Well, not everybody's built for that. So you need to understand, what your optimal performance zones are and be executing in those time zones.
And I think that's so important. So like the challenge I have for you is to really try to have the awareness of when you're multitasking and try to avoid it so that you can get deeper in your work and pay attention to your natural rhythms, your natural tendencies, when you're at your best, when you're able to go deep, the environment that's around you that you need to make sure, like, you know what, I operate well in a cluttered environment. My wife does not operate well in a cluttered environment. Kristen is or does not work well in a cluttered environment.
No.
Does not work well in a cluttered environment. Michael does work well in a cluttered environment.
So I hesitate to show you my office right now.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, like you got to figure out what is the best and what works for you. And that awareness is going to take you very, very far. Thank you for listening.